and it's not unusual for me to have to navigate the house in the dark at times. And so I can definitely say that there is a era of Victorian spooky that we sometimes have fun exploring here on site. And it's definitely, you can understand in the Victorian era their fascination with the idea of the afterlife and another world, because so much of the iconography, so much of the decorative elements and stuff lend themselves to that kind of vision. And you still see it in our artistic interpretations of ghosts today.
Yeah.
But we don't have a deep ghost story like the Winchester Mystery House.
That's
you know, like
I think
goes,
that's something else.
we don't have that, but there are reports. And as you've said, Lady MacDonald Gertie was known to have certain favorite things, and flowers and certain scents and perfumes were quite one of it. She filled the house with flowers, was one of the things that was known to happen. And so when people report that odor of flowers, you got to scratch your head when that happens, because we really don't.
So you don't advertise that.
Well,
you know
I
mean?
let people experience it on their own.
Right, and
you
then
know, we don't. It may or have it.
Yeah.
It's certainly quite special. I know that when I was reading through the records of the early founding of the museum, Hugh Gainsford, which was grandson of Hugh John, spoke about it, and he said, well, if one woman was going to haunt a place, it would be my grandmother. And she.
That says a lot.
It could be.
It's like grandma wants to check up on the place.
Right.
But I'd like to think that we're honoring the spirits
sure.
of the house, and certainly I've been impressed with some of the groups that do come here and do investigations, because they talk about greeting the spirits, and they talk about respecting the communications that they engage in.
Right.
Yeah. Well, when we were upstairs yesterday, we acknowledged Jack, and we thanked him for letting us see his room, and then walked out just to be proper. Right.
Yeah,
you know.
so I think we're doing our best to honor what's there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know, because a lot of what I was going to say, a lot of the artifacts that are in the house are a lot of things that are found from that era, so not necessarily from the family. So maybe if there would be more stuff in relation to the actual family, like their own personal belongings, I think there probably would be more activity, maybe.
Yeah, could be.
That could be. We have some significant pieces from the family, a handful of significant pieces. Certainly, the house was built for the family, and they resided here as a group, and two members passed away in the house. So I think the roots are pretty strong.
Yeah.
The Lady MacDonald went on after she did sell the house after the death of Hugh John, and she moved to the Roslyn Apartments in Osborne Village, which again has its many stories.
Yes,
so I find that interesting, and you kind of wonder sometimes.
She makes
but then
you wonder.
Well, you wonder, because this area of downtown was very different in another era. And so all these large residential apartment towers were, a number of them were stately homes and grand avenues.
This was the posh neighborhood. It wasn't Wellington. This was
the first posh neighborhood, yes. And between the Forks and the Legislative Building. And really only about 5 residential houses now remain in the area.
That's it?
Yeah.
It's really sad. It's all been parking lotted.
Parking lots, these high towers and grand towers and business offices are downtown. We like to see it populated and dense. And one of the best treats that people can do here is Veranda and gardens are open for free year round. And so people come down and they'll grab lunch from the Broadway food trucks and walk over, and sit on our veranda and enjoy the garden for a bit. And it's a nice way. And if you want to really impress a date, it's a nice way to make yourself look meaningful and soulful. Look, you know, and it's a nice little getaway in the downtown.
It's so beautiful. Like it's such a. To me, downtown is an eyesore, and unfortunately, for as proud as I am of the city, there's certain things that are kind of sliding because of just whatever, you know. And I have to work downtown, but I love to go for walks downtown just to clear my head and get some air. So it's nice when you can walk past this beautiful property.
Yeah.
You know, or even the next street over. There's the 3 houses on the next street. You know, just to look at them. You know, because it's of a time. It's captured of a time gone by where people put a lot of lot of time and energy and money and just the grandeur and just this was
everything.
You know,
gorgeous.
A lot of people kind of dismiss that now. They don't really observe that.
You know, we motor through downtown. If we are walking, we're walking very quickly to our destination, we're more mindful of traffic, and we're not really necessarily, and we're on schedule, not really looking at the areas around us. But when you do stop and slow down and look, the detail is wonderful. The details in the buildings, walking around the Broadway area is actually a real treat. And I agree with you that times downtown can be a little brutal, particularly in our winter seasons. But a walk around downtown in the summertime is a great escape and a good way to decompress from a bad day at work.
Or just staring at a computer all day and just kind of,
bleeding.
So when you see a property like this and just all the love and care that's taken into it, it's refreshing. It's nice, and some sort of humanity.
All the woodwork in here, it's I can't imagine that was all white painted, and they had to restore that.
They stripped it back very carefully.
Hours of labor.
But the fact that they left the woodwork. The house was broken up into a rooming house, which adds a whole other set of stories. Because people inhabited it in a different way.
Do you ever have people come back that were here from there?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are people. There are people still alive who remember it as a rooming house.
Really?
Yeah, and had visited it when it was broken up into small units.
Right.
And so they'll come back and say, "Oh, I remember this room being divided into 2 rooms, or
that'd be
this was in a different orientation and stuff." But the nice thing is that while they chopped up the house, they didn't strip it. So they left a lot of the original woodwork and detail there.
Remove walls or add walls or anything.
Well, they added some walls, but they didn't remove walls.
Okay.
So
everything was sort of left
the
intact.
restoration was actually could be achieved quite easily.
That's good.
Well, easily.
Yeah.
It wasn't 3 years, 3 or 4 years worth of work, but.
How much was the house to build back? We couldn't find the information. We were thinking about $30,000 at the time.
When it was built?
Yeah.
Oh, it was built for about $10,000.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I believe, and at a time when you could build a decent house for $800 to $1,000 quite easily.
Wow.
But it was
restoration was $559,000.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah, and if we were to attempt that again, just add a zero.
Yeah. So it's like 1969, right? Like that's wow. Insane.
It was very
cool.
That's great. Thank you for having us. Again, we are chatting with Thomas. He is the manager of the Dalnavert Museum. Friends of the Dalnavert, I guess is how it's properly known. Correct?
That's the stewarding group. Yes, that are they have custody of the house and are responsible for its long term.
Yeah, custody of the
well,
house.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a membership society. People can buy membership and become friends of the Dalnavert Museum and help support it. And its sole purpose is the long term preservation and the house and museum.
Right.
Yeah, we'll make sure we put a link when we air the show.
That'd be
we'll
excellent.
Links
Links?
We'll put links on Instagram. I was trying to
Absolutely.
Instagram,
and Facebook, and we don't. Well, I have a webpage through my webpage, but we don't really update that. So just Facebook is more current, and then we're on iTunes and all that good stuff. So make sure we'll get you guys some attention.
Yeah.
And when I know that this is your first visit to Dalnavert as the podcast, and I'm hoping as you're continuing to develop your programming and stuff that we'll get you back here and explore some stories. As you said, Christmas time is a great storytelling time.
Or Halloween if you have
and Halloween,
We did actually make, finally, after stalking Kristen for like months, we've only been around 3 months, and I think I've been stalking her 2 out of those 3 months.
She's a very busy person.
Busy,
yeah. And we caught up with her at the jail last night.
Yes.
We had an impromptu, beautiful half-an-hour interview.
Yeah.
Oh,
just stellar. Like, honestly, like, just the information she gave us was more than we could even have imagined. And, of course, we'd have to pay, but she's having a tour in July at Lower Fort Garry. We'd have a camera crew coming from BC, so she wants to come to that.
Right.
And we can report. So that's wonderful. Like, we
I
just
think
want
that's
to make
fabulous.
sure everybody's connected, and we want to promote everybody, just as a city, and we're all here to do good work to keep everybody in touch and explore and
share so other people know about it.
Because
lots of people don't know about this.
They go 9 to 5, they forget what's actually going on or what has occurred here over the years.
Yeah. People drive by.
Sometimes you forget what's going on in your own neighborhood or your own backyard, but Winnipeg has got endless opportunities to do things.
Yeah. I mean, like we like the haunted aspect because we're kind of intuitive to a certain degree, and I've had a lot of experiences, and she's had a couple of experiences. So we just not like there's so many people, and we find.
So when you visited yesterday, did you have a chance to feel much or engage much?
Not too. I think my guard was kind of yesterday.
Yeah, and you didn't want to go in that closet though. I went in that
No,
closet though. There's a closet
On the second floor?
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
odd. I the second floor bedrooms,
Yeah.
a number of people become uneasy.
I don't like the closets.
I'm not quite sure about
I don't know what it is.
You're not the
about
only
it, but
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. She felt kind of heavy when she was
When she went in.
pictures for us
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. I really like the
Oh,
basement,
really?
though. Yeah.
Okay.
She's a first responder. She's a firefighter, so she's
All right.
gone into a lot of buildings where she's felt very heavy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The back part of the room, the summer kitchen.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the summer kitchen. Yeah.
In there. Come back through into the front here again. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
just the same. But
Yeah.
exact same thing.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we love the opportunity. I did read something, but I did see just this last fall there was some writers group that spent the night.
Oh yes, yes,
And how does
that
one get
was
in on that?
really. That was with the Writers
Because I am a
Festival.
writer, so
So the
how do I
Writers
get in on
Festival
that?
has been involved staging readings during their
Oh.
festival at Dalnavert for 3 years.
Is this through the Thin Air Festival?
Yeah, the Winnipeg Writers Festival.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was the Thin Air or if they're jointly, but the Winnipeg Writers Festival, and last year they did readings here again, but then they had certain writers applied, and they selected 3 or 4 writers to spend the night at Dalnavert, and
okay.
so they had the opportunity.
Yeah, she's like, I gotta get in on that.
And so they, and then they wrote a story,
Oh, okay.
and the stories were published in a little self-published book
Oh, okay.
journal called Phasmagoria.
Oh.
I'll check in our gift shop and see if we have any left,
Oh.
because it was a limited run. But then they wrote stories, some of them inspired by their experience of them, and some of them just inspired by being in the setting, but they're
Right.
set somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
But it was an interesting experience. It came from there's been so many people that said, "Oh, I'd like to spend the night there. I'd like
Right.
to see what would happen."
Right.
And so we thought, well, maybe we
we'll
can
try.
arrange for
Yeah.
that to happen if people.
Yes.
Well, we tried to make it as comfortable as we could
Right.
under the circumstances. But like I said, I do have the privilege. Who doesn't want the keys to a museum? I have a very
yeah.
privileged job,
Yeah.
so I do have the chance to be at the in the museum at odd hours. I'm not always thrilled to be there at odd hours, but
Oh, yeah.
it's not unusual for me
Right.
to
For
be
sure.
here at
Yeah.
odd hours. But I understand the attraction for people to be able to experience the house at those different times.
Right.
I wouldn't attempt room 202 at the Fort Garrett Hotel.
No, don't go
Oh,
there.
really?
No, don't stay over there
I
overnight.
don't
It's a
know,
bad
that's-
room.
That's just off to me. You know what? Because I've actually had a couple of experiences through the whole hotel, so it's not just because of that one room per se. There's too much funky energy in that
Yeah.
hotel. There really is. I've seen and felt things in there,
Yeah.
and just stuff I can't explain. And I'm like, I don't really. I'm not saying I don't feel welcome, but I mean, I don't think like here I feel at home sipping water.
Yeah.
Well,
And if somebody just
Yeah.
said good night and went like
Yeah,
this
I'd
and
be like,
doesn't
okay,
leave, I'm
yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
you know. But I mean, there, like apparently the ghost snuggles with you and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's cuddling up to you. I'm like, no, I'm okay with that.
I don't know.
No.
There's so many.
Would you spend the night here?
Would I here?
Yeah, given your experience, you would be okay.
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it'd be
Yeah.
Yeah.
not in the front.
Not in that room. Not in the front hall.
In the back
Okay.
kitchen.
I think the thing is, if you come in with an open mind and you're respectful, I think that makes the difference. And I think that has a lot to say whenever you go
Yeah.
to any place that has older history.
Oh,
Yes, I think
historical
so.
places are, yeah.
Because if you come in like you've got an axe to grind,
Yeah, or you're like,
point
yeah.
or something, or
Listen to me.
try to humiliate something. Because like I always say, and we said this before, like these are still people. They're just
Yeah.
not here with us anymore.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just kind of have to keep everybody on an even plane.
Especially if it's
because
like your home. No one
Yeah.
wants you to barge into their
Of course
home and
not.
make a,
Yeah.
you know.
we may swear a little bit. and
Yeah,
stuff, but
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was kind of,
That was because yesterday
Yeah.
I was videotaping.
yeah, that was
and
kind of weird.
My camera. My mom had passed recently. We inherited a lot of. She did graceful sins. Okay, whatever. But she left a few video cameras. One was never used. Brand new, beautiful little JVC. And then we had. Where did we take it? We went to the museum. We had a
Filmed for
gentleman
the
give us a
whole time
personal
there,
tour,
yeah.
you know, there, and filled the whole time, no problem. And
Yep.
then all of a sudden yesterday, I had to charge him overnight. Battery died.
Yeah.
I don't know why. So I said, okay, that's fine. But it's the camera because I think even though it's not used, the batteries themselves only have a certain amount of life anyway, no matter how charged they are. And so I started using my phone, and my phone's fully charged. I
Yep.
charged at work before I came, and everything's fine. I have way too many pictures, but I've been taking a lot off, And then we went with Augusta into the bathroom upstairs, and then she was showing us the pills in the
Yeah.
Yeah.
medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
And and I made some offhanded comment about the gin pills, and my camera shut off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shut off.
She's like, what the